The first time my coffee rippled, I thought it was a joke, some cheap Jurassic Park knockoff playing on my phone. But when the chandelier began to sway at exactly 1130 p.m., night after night, and my dog Scout lifted his head like he could hear the ground breathing, I knew something under Ironwill Ridge was moving with purpose, not a quake, not pipes. A rhythm like steel whispering through concrete. I pressed my ear to the basement floor and felt a hum that didn't belong to my house, or to me. Then I found the logo, our HOA's smug little crest, stamped on a hidden access panel beneath my backyard. That's when the fear turned into oxygen. If they dug under my life without asking, they just tunneled straight into my best leverage. And I was done asking nicely. Before we dive in, drop your city and local time in the comments, let me know where you're watching from. And if HOA drama, dark humor, and sweet revenge are your thing, subscribe so you don't miss the twist. By the time the sun rose over Ironwill Ridge the next morning, I was running on caffeine and paranoia. The vibrations had gotten worse, strong enough to rattle the silverware drawer. My dog Scout refused to go near the basement door anymore, just sat there staring at it, whining softly. I tried to laugh it off, but inside I felt something hollow crack open. Houses don't shake like that for weeks, unless something is seriously wrong. I'd lived here 15 years on a quiet cul-de-sac where nothing more exciting than a leaf blower complaint ever happened. My backyard backed up to a forested slope that dipped toward an old service road. Perfect, peaceful, uneventful, until the night the rumbling started. At first I thought maybe it was a busted water main or some kind of underground pump, but the rhythm was too deliberate, too mechanical. It came like clockwork, 1130 p.m., sharp lasting about 2 minutes each time, just long enough to make me question my sanity. When I mentioned it to my neighbor Ethan, he shrugged. Old houses settle, Miles. You've probably got loose plumbing or a bad foundation. My house isn't old, I shot back, and last I checked, foundations don't growl. He laughed, but I didn't. Because that morning I'd found a hairline crack running up my bedroom wall like a lightning strike frozen in plaster. And that wasn't all. One of my porch tiles had popped loose overnight. The ground underneath it was warm to the touch. That's when I called Brenda Calder, the HOA president. If anyone knew about construction or city work nearby, it'd be her. She answered on the second ring, voice sweet as antifreeze. Good morning, Mr. Carter. What seems to be the concern today? Something's shaking my house at night, I said. It's cracking walls, breaking fixtures. Feels like a train passing underneath. She sighed loudly. Have you considered it might be your HVAC system? We've had complaints before about homeowners mistaking normal noises for structural issues. My HVAC doesn't cause seismic events, Brenda. I'm telling you, something's moving under my property. Well, the HOA doesn't manage personal problems, Mr. Carter. Maybe call a handyman. Or a therapist. And just like that, she hung up. That night, the shaking was worse. My bedside lamp toppled, Scout howled, and I swore I heard a low metallic screech beneath the floorboards like steel on steel. I grabbed a flashlight, went down to the basement, and pressed my ear to the concrete. It wasn't just sound anymore. It was motion. The ground had a pulse. The next morning, I decided to stop guessing. If Brenda wouldn't help, I'd find someone who would. I called Dr. Lila Grant, a geotechnical engineer and consultant I'd seen interviewed on a local news segment about sinkholes. When I told her what was happening, she sounded intrigued instead of dismissive. Could be anything, she said. But if it's rhythmic and localized, it's probably man-made. I can bring my GPR scanner this afternoon. By noon, her white van pulled up with gear that looked straight out of Ghostbusters. She dragged cables and metal plates across my yard, scanning the soil layer by layer. The machine emitted faint beeps as it compiled a digital image on her tablet. Lila frowned. Mr. Carter, you might want to sit down. On the screen was a perfect cylinder running directly beneath my backyard, about 12 feet wide, 40 feet deep, reinforced with concrete. Not an old pipe, not erosion, a tunnel. Is it natural? I asked, already knowing the answer. She shook her head slowly. No way. This is engineered. Recent, too. You can see how clean the density lines are. Whatever this is, someone spent serious money building it. My blood ran cold. Beneath my yard, beneath my mortgage, my life savings, someone had carved a highway. Lila bit her lip. If I were you, I'd call your county zoning office. Maybe the utilities department. This isn't a home issue, it's a property rights nightmare waiting to happen. When she left, I just stood there, staring at the ground, the air heavy with that kind of silence that comes after discovering you've been violated. A few hours later, curiosity and rage pushed me over the edge. I rented a mini excavator from the hardware store and started digging at the far corner of my yard, the one closest to the forest line. Ethan wandered over with a beer in hand. What's all this about miles? Finding answers, I said, scooping another load of dirt. You sure this is legal? I'm sure whatever's under here isn't. At just under 3 feet, the shovel hit something solid, smooth, curved concrete. My heart stopped. Together we cleared more dirt until the outline of a massive tunnel came into view. And right in the middle of the concrete was an embedded steel hatch, its surface engraved with the unmistakable Iron Will Ridge HOA logo. Ethan's beer slipped from his hand and thudded into the mud. That's not city work. No, I said quietly. It's worse. Not even 5 minutes later, a familiar voice pierced the air. What do you think you're doing? I turned to see Brenda striding across my lawn stilettos, sinking into the dirt phone already recording. Her designer sunglasses reflected the hole I'd just dug. You're violating HOA code 4.3 amperes, unauthorized excavation. I'll be issuing fines. Fines, I laughed. You built a damn subway under my backyard. She flinched just slightly. That's city infrastructure. Has nothing to do with us. Then why's your logo stamped on it? Her jaw tightened. You're making a mistake, Mr. Carter. Fill this in before you cause property damage. To who me because, last I checked, it's my land you tunneled through. For the first time I saw something flicker behind her eyes, fear. But it vanished as quickly as it came. She adjusted her blazer composure, snapping back like a rubber band. There will be an emergency HOA meeting tomorrow. Attendance is mandatory. I suggest you stop playing with heavy machinery until then. She left without another word, tires screeching as she sped away. Ethan whistled. Man, she's hiding something big. Yeah, I muttered, looking down at the hatch, and I planned to find out what. That night, sleep was impossible. Every hour or so, the rumble came again, low, steady, mechanical. I grabbed my phone and started recording. The clock read 1130 p.m. on the dot. The vibration made the picture frames quiver in rhythm. I crouched in the basement, holding the phone to the floor, and heard it distinct metallic clanking, echoing like wheels gliding on rails. A train. Someone had built a train tunnel under my property. The next morning, I took the footage straight to my friend Marlon Reyes, a real estate lawyer who'd helped me close on the house years ago. When he saw the video and Leela's ground scans, his eyebrows shot up. They can't do that, he said firmly. Under state law, you own your land from the surface down to the center of the earth. If that tunnel cuts through your parcel, it's trespassing. Worse, it's theft. The HOA claims it's city infrastructure. Then the city should have the permits. He smirked. Wanna bet they don't. He pulled up the county records on his laptop, scrolled through a few pages, then leaned back with a slow grin. No permits, no easements, nothing. Whatever they built, they did it off the books. My stomach twisted not from fear this time, but from opportunity. So legally, he said, tapping the screen, that tunnel belongs to you. I sat back, the absurdity sinking in. They'd spent millions digging through my property without permission, and I owned every inch of it. Brenda thought she could intimidate me into silence, but she'd just handed me the biggest leverage of my life. The ground beneath my feet wasn't a threat anymore. It was an asset. And I was about to turn their secret tunnel into their biggest nightmare. The clubhouse smelled like lemon polish and fake sincerity. Every seat was filled that night, neighbors whispering phones out, pretending not to stare at me. At the front of the room sat Brenda Calder, her red blazer so bright it could stop traffic, flanked by her 2 loyal lieutenants, Nora Pike, the HOA treasurer, and Cliff Hammond, the self-proclaimed security director whose actual job was mowing lawns. Brenda tapped her gavel once the room fell quiet and the mask of composure slid neatly over her face. Good evening, everyone. We've called this emergency session to address a situation concerning one of our homeowners, Mr. Miles Carter. My name rolled off her tongue like a stain she couldn't scrub out. I sat near the back folder on my lap containing everything Lila's ground, scans Marlon's legal notes, and a printed copy of my property deed. Brenda continued, Mr. Carter has undertaken unauthorized excavation on his property, endangering community infrastructure. The HOA urges him to cease and restore the site immediately. I stood up. Community infrastructure. Is that what we're calling a secret train tunnel now? A low murmur spread through the room. Brenda blinked twice, then forced a smile. Mr. Carter is mistaken. What he's referring to is a city project. Then why does it have your logo stamped on the hatch under my backyard? Her eyes narrowed. Nora leaned forward, whispering something in Brenda's ear. Brenda lifted her chin. We have no comment on ongoing development matters, but rest assured everything has been handled with proper authorization. I opened the folder and held up the ground scan printouts. You mean these? Because according to this, There's a 12-foot wide concrete tunnel running right through my parcel built recently. New record, new permit, new notice to homeowners. Someone in the crowd gasped. Another voice shouted, "Wait, there's a tunnel!" Brenda slammed the gavel. "Order, please." But the damage was done. People began whispering louder, pulling out their phones. I could see confusion turning into anger, and Brenda knew it too. Her jaw tensed. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "trying to regain control. This project is intended to improve community connectivity, a direct access route to the downtown district, increasing property values for everyone." "Then why didn't anyone vote on it?" asked Mrs. Dwyer, a retiree who never missed a meeting. "We vote on fence colors, for heaven's sake. Why not this?" "That's classified information," Nora snapped. "Certain details fall under administrative discretion." Translation. I said loudly, "They did it behind our backs." Brenda's composure cracked just enough for me to see the twitch in her cheek. "Mr. Carter, you're dangerously close to slander." "Then show me the permits," I said. "Show us the city contracts, the environmental review, anything proving this was legal." Her silence was the loudest sound in the room. Finally, Cliff leaned into his mic, his deep voice booming. "Mr. Carter's hostility is disrupting the meeting. I motion for fines under Section 9 amperes for creating community discord." "You can fine me all you want," I said, stepping forward, "but I'll still own what's under my property. Legally, the tunnel is mine." The crowd erupted again. Brenda banged her gavel so hard the head flew off and rolled across the floor. It was poetic watching her authority literally come apart. When the chaos died down, Brenda straightened, her face pale, but her tone icy. "This meeting is adjourned. The board will handle the matter internally." As people filed out, some stopped to whisper to me, half curious, half afraid. "You really think it's yours?" one man asked quietly. "I don't think," I said. "I know." Outside, the air was cool and sharp. Streetlights flickered over perfectly trimmed lawns. For the first time, Ironwheel Ridge didn't look peaceful. It looked staged, like a movie set built to hide something rotten beneath. Marlon called as I walked to my car. "How'd it go?" They panicked, I said. "Tried to pass it off as a city project. Expected. But I've got news for you. I just checked with the County Utilities Board. No city tunnels anywhere near Ironwheel Ridge. Whatever they built, it's 100% private. Then it's officially mine." "Legally, yes," Marlon said, "but they won't give up that easy. Expect retaliation." He wasn't wrong. The next morning, I woke to find a bright orange sticker plastered on my mailbox, "Property in violation." Below it a list, everything from improper grass height to unauthorized lawn furniture. 17 violations in total. 17. Even Scout's doghouse was apparently a zoning issue now. By noon, I got 3 emails from the HOA, demanding payment of $4, 200 inches fines. And then came the notice of an inspection. At exactly 3 p.m., a white SUV marked HOA compliance parked outside. A man in a neon vest and mirrored sunglasses stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Carter, fire safety check." I raised an eyebrow. "Fire safety, you need 48 hours written notice for that." He smirked. "We're operating under emergency authority, Article 8, Section 12. Won't take long." I started recording on my phone. "Please state the nature of the emergency." He paused, eyes flicking to the camera. "We can do this the easy way, or you can get off my property," I interrupted. He hesitated, then retreated to the SUV and made a fake radio call before driving off. I could almost feel Brenda's hand guiding every move, intimidate, annoy, exhaust. But all she did was fuel the fire. That night, as the 1130 rumble began again, I set up my phone to record video and audio. The footage captured everything: the vibration, the faint metallic grind, and most damning of all, a soft echoing horn beneath the earth. I uploaded it to a private drive and sent copies to Marlon and Lila. If Brenda wanted a war, I was making sure there'd be witnesses. The next day, Marlon called with something better than comfort proof. "You were right," he said. "Follow the money." Brenda approved 3 infrastructure improvement contracts over the past 2 years, all paid to companies registered under her brother's name. She funneled HOA funds into the tunnel. Yep, $500,000 from the pool renovation fund, another $250,000 from road repairs. She basically embezzled community money to dig her secret project. I sat there gripping the phone. "You can prove it, I can now. But don't do anything stupid. File your ownership claim first. Once the county recognizes that the tunnel segment is on your property, the entire structure becomes yours by extension. So I'd own the tunnel." "Exactly." He sent me the paperwork that night, a thick stack of legal forms confirming subsurface property ownership recognition. I filed it first thing the next morning. The clerk at the county records office looked confused. "You're claiming ownership of a tunnel. built illegally under my home, I said. Her eyebrows shot up. You're serious, dead serious. Well, I've never filed one of these before, she said, flipping through the pages. But if everything checks out, it's valid under state code. When I left the building, the sun felt warmer, the air lighter. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't reacting, I was advancing. At lunch, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered. You're making a huge mistake, Brenda's voice hissed through the line. You have no idea what you're up against. Actually, I said I know exactly what's under me. And now so do the county records. Silence. Then a long exhale. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said. But not as much as you will when the city finds out what you've built. I hung up before she could reply. That night I stood on my deck as the rumble started again, steady, powerful, alive. Only this time I didn't feel fear. I felt ownership. The earth beneath me wasn't shaking anymore. It was shifting in my favor. Because Brenda had dug her own downfall, and she'd done it straight through my property deed. By the time the second emergency HOA meeting was announced, the whole neighborhood was buzzing like a hornet's nest. Flyers slipped under doors, whispered gossip over morning walks. A few of my neighbors wouldn't even make eye contact with me. Brenda had been busy, her propaganda machine was running at full throttle. I arrived at the clubhouse early wearing my calmest expression, even though my pulse thudded in my throat. Inside rows of folding chairs faced the podium like a courtroom. Brenda stood at the front again, every strand of hair in place, radiating that terrifying HOA poise. But behind the smile, her eyes had that glassy glint of someone holding on to control by the tips of her manicured nails. Thank you for attending on such short notice, she began sweetly. We're here to clarify certain rumors circulating about the Ironwell Ridge Transit Project. She even gave the illegal tunnel a name. She clicked her remote, and a PowerPoint flickered onto the projector screen diagrams of tunnels, mock-up renderings of future connectivity, smiling families stepping into imaginary stations. Every slide screamed legitimacy, the kind that fools people who don't read the fine print. This project, Brenda continued, represents a visionary step forward for our community. A private commuter line connecting us directly to downtown Fairview. Increased property value, reduced traffic, eco-friendly transportation, funded by voluntary contributions and community improvement reallocations. I stood. You mean embezzled funds? Heads turned. A few gasps. Brenda's lips twitched but didn't break form. Mr. Carter, please, you're out of order. I'm not the one out of order, you are. You built $1 million tunnel under my house without consent or permits. I have the ground scans, the zoning maps, and a statement from the county confirming it. Sit down. Nora barked from beside her, slamming her hand on the table. You're spreading misinformation and destabilizing the community. The tension in the room cracked like dry wood. Several neighbors started murmuring. Wait, he said under his house. She can't do that, right? Brenda tried to talk over them, but I didn't stop. I pulled a folder from my bag and laid the evidence out on the nearest table. Lila's GPR scans the plat map, the section of my deed with clear subsurface rights listed. You see this line here? From the surface to the center of the earth. That's mine. You didn't just trespass, you stole. Brenda's tone dropped to a low growl. Mr. Carter, you are dangerously close to defamation. I met her glare head on. You want to talk defamation? Try explaining to everyone here why your company's name, Calder Infrastructure LLC, appears on the excavation contracts, the ones that drained the HOA maintenance fund. That hit her like a slap. She recovered quickly, plastering on a condescending smile. Those contracts were handled by independent vendors. The board approved them. Funny, I said, because half the board claims they never saw those votes recorded in any meeting minutes. And the other half, you fired or replaced them last year. The crowd turned restless. Mrs. Dwyer from across the street stood up. Brenda, did you really use our dues for this? Of course not, Brenda snapped, but her pitch had climbed an octave. This project benefits everyone. The tunnel will cut commute times, raise property values by how much someone called out. And who owns it? Brenda froze. That's right, I said. Who owns it? Because according to county records, I do. The portion that runs under my land, and without my permission, you can't open a single gate. The room erupted. Shouts overlapped. Someone yelled, you can't just build under people's homes. Another voice, I never agreed to pay for that. Nora banged her clipboard against the table. Everyone calm down, you're misunderstanding the legal structure. Legal? I barked out a laugh. There's nothing legal about this. You've got no permits, no zoning, and no right of way. You think adding a PowerPoint slide makes it legitimate. Brenda's face hardened. Enough. You're violating decorum. This meeting is hereby adjourned. But But the crowd wasn't done. Even Cliff, her loyal enforcer, looked uneasy. "Brenda, maybe we should just show him the documents." Her glare could have burned steel. "There are no documents." "Exactly." I gathered my papers, slowly making sure everyone could see how calm I was. "I'll be filing an injunction tomorrow morning. Any further construction under or near my property will be considered criminal trespass. And if anyone charges me another fine, I'll have it added to the lawsuit." I walked out before she could respond. The murmurs followed me all the way to the door. Outside, the night air was thick and humming with tension. I knew Brenda wouldn't let this go, and I was right. At dawn, a black SUV idled across the street, engine running. Scout barked at it until it drove off. My mailbox was stuffed again, another set of violation notices. Same nonsense as before, but now there was a new one. Unauthorized use of legal representation without board notification. They were literally trying to fine me for hiring a lawyer. I took a photo of every single paper, emailed it to Marlon, and texted him. "They've gone full psycho." He called back almost immediately. "Let them. Every fine they send strengthens your case. But I want you to do something for me. Don't engage. Don't yell. Don't post online. Just keep documenting." "Too late for silence," I muttered. "They're escalating." By the afternoon, I realized what he meant. Someone had vandalized my backyard camera, smashed clean off the post. The motion lights had been disconnected, wires snipped neatly. HOA's idea of intimidation had moved from paperwork to sabotage. At 8 p.m., there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, a man in a suit stood there, briefcase in hand. "Mr. Carter, I'm Thomas Ray, attorney for Ironwell Ridge Homeowners Association." "Let me guess," I said, crossing my arms. "You're here to threaten me." "Of course not." He smiled coldly. "I'm here to resolve this amicably. Mrs. Calder asked me to deliver these documents for your signature." He handed me a folder thick enough to choke a printer. On top was a form titled Acknowledgement of HOA Infrastructure Rights and Non-Disclosure Agreement. "You're kidding," I said. He adjusted his tie. "By signing, you acknowledge the association's authority over community projects, including subterranean infrastructure, and agree not to disclose or impede construction activities." "And if I don't?" He didn't blink. "Then the board will pursue legal action for defamation, breach of covenant, and interference with community development. Fines accrue daily, retroactive to your first violation." "You mean when I dug in my own yard?" He tilted his head slightly. "Yes." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Tell Brenda her tunnel's mine, and if she wants to keep using it, she'll be paying rent." The mask cracked for half a second. Then he smiled again, all polished teeth. "Good night, Mr. Carter." When the door shut behind him, the silence was suffocating. Scout whined at my feet. I sat on the couch papers spread across the table, reading line by line. Every clause was poison, designed to strip me of my rights and gag me permanently. By midnight, I'd scanned everything and sent it to Marlon. His reply came 5 minutes later. "Do not sign. This is coercion and illegal under state homeowner statutes. I'll handle it." But before I went to bed, I stepped out onto the deck. The night was still, the stars clear. And then, right on cue, the rumble began again, rolling under my feet like a slow, steady heartbeat. I leaned on the railing and whispered into the dark, "Keep digging, Brenda. Every inch you build down there just adds another zero to what you owe me." The earth trembled in response, like it agreed. The next week turned my quiet life into a siege. HOA envelopes piled on my doorstep like dead birds. Every morning brought a new list of absurd violations: improper trash can angle, unauthorized mailbox paint, even failure to maintain festive curb appeal. They were inventing rules faster than I could read them. Marlon told me to keep calm, but calm didn't pay for the engine Brenda's people had just destroyed. The mechanic had found sugar in the gas tank, pure sabotage. It was psychological warfare, HOA style, the kind that didn't draw blood but drained your sanity. The final straw came when I found my garden uprooted, every tomato plant, snapped soil kicked across the lawn like someone had danced on it. Scout barked at the damaged nose to the ground tail low. I checked my security footage, but the feed was blank. Someone had neatly sliced the camera cable. By that afternoon, I had had enough. I drove straight to Marlon's office, the box of violation notices riding shotgun. He took one look and whistled. 17 separate charges in 3 days. That's impressive even for them. "They're trying to bury me," I said, "literally and legally." He spread the papers out across his desk like a crime scene map. "Relax. I've seen this tactic before. It's classic harassment, bury you in paperwork so you quit fighting. I'm not quitting." "I didn't say you would." he grinned. But we're going to stop playing defense. That's when he dropped the real bombshell. They messed up the filings. What filings? The HOA's construction documentation. I pulled the city's public works registry this morning. Brenda never applied for subterranean development rights because she couldn't. The HOA isn't legally recognized as a construction entity. They filed under a shell company. Let me guess, I said. Her brother's name, close, her brother-in-law. Company called Calder Infrastructure Partners. They've funneled hundreds of thousands through community improvement fees. Classic embezzlement. My mind raced. So what do? We file ownership claim paperwork on the tunnel segment under your property. He leaned forward, eyes glinting. Once that's approved by the county clerk, the tunnel becomes your asset. They'll have to pay you to use it. It sounded insane, but also deliciously poetic. The HOA had tunneled under my house, and now the law would let me own their mistake. The next day, I stood at the county recorder's window while the clerk stamped the final page of my claim. Congratulations, Mr. Carter, she said, puzzled. You're now the registered owner of a 12-foot wide underground structure. Never thought I'd add tunnel landlord to my resume, I muttered. By the time I drove home, my phone was lighting up with angry emails. Brenda must have received the notice. One message stood out, short, furious, and full of venom. From HOA_president@ironwillridge.org. Subject: you're making a huge mistake. Message: you don't know who you're dealing with. I smiled. Actually, I did. That evening, I sat on my porch watching the sunset. The world seemed quiet for once, until the faint rumble began again. Only this time I wasn't angry. I was calculating. Every vibration below me was another dollar sign. The peace didn't last. Around 9 headlights swept across my yard. A black SUV rolled to a stop by my driveway. A man in a crisp HOA uniform got out, clipboard in hand. Evening, Mr. Carter. Fire code inspection. Didn't we already go over this? I asked, stepping down the porch. You need 48 hours notice. Emergency clause, he said. Article 8, Section 12. That article doesn't exist. He hesitated. We can do this the easy way, or you can leave before I call the sheriff. I raised my phone and started recording. His posture changed instantly. He backed away, muttering into his radio, then drove off without another word. Marlon laughed when I told him the next morning. They're bluffing. Keep documenting everything. Oh, I am, I said. I'm building a library of HOA stupidity. But Brenda was done bluffing. At noon, she called an unscheduled community emergency session. By evening, the clubhouse parking lot was jammed. People looked uneasy, half of them loyal to Brenda, half curious about the rumor that I'd somehow seized the tunnel. Inside, Brenda opened with her trademark condescending calm. It's come to our attention that Mr. Carter has made false claims regarding property ownership below his home. These rumors threaten community harmony. I stood at the back, arms crossed. False claims. The county recognized my ownership this morning. Murmurs again. Brenda's smile faltered. That recognition was obtained under fraudulent pretenses. Fraudulent. I took out my phone and projected the official record onto the wall. Stamped, filed, and verified by the county clerk. I own that segment legally. You built through it illegally. Nora shot up. You can't just own a tunnel, I turned toward her. You can if it runs under your land. Subsurface Rights State Code 45B. Maybe you should have read the law before drilling through my yard. A ripple of laughter spread through the room. Short, nervous, but it was something. Brenda slammed her gavel. Enough. This meeting is over. Not quite, I said. Because from this moment on, the HOA owes me for easement use. Starting today, the rent is $5 million. Gasps. A few people even clapped. Brenda's eyes burned holes through me. That's extortion. No, I said calmly. That's property law. And I've already hired an appraiser. She went silent. For the first time, she looked small. When the meeting finally adjourned, I walked outside into the cool air. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I'd stood up to her and won, at least for the night. But the war wasn't over. At 10 p.m., my doorbell rang. I opened it to find an envelope taped to the door. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Drop the claim or lose everything. No signature, just those words in bold red type. I laughed, because if Brenda thought a printed threat would scare me, she'd underestimated how far gone I was. Still, sleep didn't come easily. The tunnel rumbled again around midnight, deep and slow. I imagined Brenda pacing her marble kitchen, calculating her next move. The next day proved me right. When I walked to my car, I noticed a dark smear on the pavement oil leaking from underneath. I crouched and saw the plug had been loosened deliberately. They were trying to break everything around me, my car, my garden, my peace. But I had something stronger than rage. I had leverage. I drove my rental to Marlon's office, still running on pure adrenaline. He handed me a thick envelope. Everything's ready. The ownership claimed the zoning complaint, and get this, the financial audit request. Once we file these, the state inspector will start digging into their accounts. I took the papers, scanning the signatures. You think they'll fight it, they'll try. But the moment a government agency gets involved, Brenda's entire empire crumbles. You're not just fighting an HOA anymore, Miles. You're exposing a fraud ring. I leaned back, letting that sink in. For weeks I'd felt hunted, cornered. Now for the first time the scales had tipped. Let's file it, I said. He grinned. Thought you'd say that. We walked the forms straight to the county administration building. I slid them across the counter to the clerk who'd helped me before. She read the subject line, eyebrows rising. Ironwheel Ridge, again. You people are making me famous. Hopefully for the right reasons, I said. She stamped the papers. Clack. Just like that, it was official. The state would investigate the HOA's finances and construction permits. Outside, Marlon clapped my shoulder. Congratulations. You just declared war on an entire neighborhood association. Good, I said. They started it underground. I'll finish it in daylight. That night, as I pulled into my driveway, the same black SUV sat idling at the curb. For a heartbeat, I wondered if I should call the sheriff. But then I remembered the camera I'd installed on the second floor, hidden, this time high under the eaves. Let them watch. I was watching back. The rumble came again at 1130 sharp. The tunnel still pulsed beneath my house like some sleeping beast. Only now it wasn't their weapon anymore. It was mine, and it was worth millions. By the time dawn crept over Ironwheel Ridge the next morning, I knew Brenda would pivot to something new. The harassment campaign had hit every stage: fines, inspections, sabotage. All that was left was to spin the narrative before I could. And she moved fast. At 7:30 a.m., my phone buzzed with texts from neighbors. Did you really demand millions? Why are you holding the community hostage? One link after another led to the same press release, Ironwheel Ridge, HOA's official statement. It read like a smear piece out of a political campaign. Local homeowner blocks essential community infrastructure, extorts neighbors, jeopardizes public safety. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee trembling in its cup, as the first rumble of the day rose through the floorboards. Scout barked once and then fell silent, as if even he was tired of the noise. They've gone public, I muttered to Marlon over speakerphone. Expected, he said. They're trying to paint you as the villain before the investigation hits. Do you know how many people believe HOA newsletters more than county records? Let them, Marlon said. Because in a week, the state inspector will issue findings. You'll be holding not just the tunnel, but their entire board by the throat. He paused. But until then, watch your back. It turned out watch your back wasn't a metaphor. That afternoon, as I scrubbed graffiti off my garage door, someone had sprayed greedy across it in neon orange. A crew of workers in hard hats rolled a crane onto my property. I ran outside. What the hell do you think you're doing? A man with a clipboard looked up. Emergency utility repair. HOA approved it this morning. On my property, without my permission. He shrugged. Got all the paperwork right here, signed by the homeowner. He handed me a form. My name was on it. My signature wasn't. I didn't sign this. Take it up with your HOA, he said, already signaling the crane operator. Within minutes, they were digging a 6-foot hole directly above the tunnel access point I'd uncovered. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a repair. It was sabotage, an attempt to block or reclaim the section I legally owned. I called the police. They arrived an hour later, by which time the workers had already poured fresh concrete over the access. Civil matter, the officer said, glancing at the paperwork. Take it up with your HOA. You've got to be kidding, I said. That's a forged signature. Sir, this isn't a criminal issue. Contact an attorney. When the patrol car drove off, I just stood there staring at the new slab of concrete in my yard. It gleamed wet and gray in the afternoon sun like a fresh headstone. That evening, a news van parked outside my house. A young reporter approached, microphone ready. Mr. Carter, can you comment on allegations that you're holding your community hostage for financial gain? I blinked at her. What? She handed me a printed copy of the HOA's press release. It framed me as a greedy opportunist, extorting neighbors to allow critical safety infrastructure to continue. They've weaponized the media, I said under my breath. Sir, the reporter asked. Tell your viewers this, I said, leaning toward the mic. The HOA built an illegal train tunnel under my property, stole funds from its members, and now wants to pretend I'm the problem. I filed a legal claim because they broke the law, not because I want to hurt my neighbors. Her eyebrows rose, but she nodded, jotting notes. Would you be willing to provide evidence? I held up my folder. I've got more than enough evidence. When she left, my phone lit up with calls and voicemails, some supportive, most hostile. Neighbors I'd known for a decade left messages accusing me of greed. On the neighborhood forum, Brenda's allies flooded threads with posts about how I was endangering everyone by blocking the tunnel. Only one message stood out, a text from Ethan. They're lying. Stay strong. I typed back, thanks. Any idea what they're planning next? He replied, heard Brenda telling Nora last night the city's involved now. Don't know details. The city. The one piece of this puzzle I hadn't touched yet. The next morning, Marlon called me with news that made my head spin. The transit authority reached out, he said. They've been watching this unfold. Turns out your tunnel segment is the keystone in a north-south line they've been trying to build for years. They're interested, more than interested. They're furious. They had no idea a private HOA was building to city specifications without permits, but they do know you're the legal owner of the missing link. I felt a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. So what does that mean for me? It means you're holding the golden ticket. If the city wants that connection, they'll have to go through you, not Brenda. Later that day, a sleek black sedan pulled into my driveway. A woman in a dark suit stepped out, handing me a card embossed with the seal of the Fairview Transit Authority. Mr. Carter, she said, Director Mallister would like to meet with you regarding your property situation. Why would the Transit Authority care about an HOA dispute? She smiled thinly. Perhaps because that tunnel was built to precise municipal transit specifications, almost as if it was always intended to be part of the city network. Tomorrow at 9, his office. She handed me a folder and left without another word. Inside the folder were detailed plans for a citywide transit expansion. The tunnel under my house wasn't a random HOA project. It was a critical link between north and south lines, a line the city had abandoned years ago due to budget cuts. Brenda had seen the opportunity first. She built it off the books, planning to sell it to the city later for a fortune, and she'd built it through my land. That night I called Marlon. This changes everything. He sounded almost giddy. Exactly. She didn't just build an illegal tunnel. She built an illegal public transit tunnel. And you own the missing piece. You're not just holding her project hostage, you're holding the city's. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. That makes me the most dangerous man in Ironwheel Ridge. No, Marlon said. That makes you the only man with leverage big enough to take her down. For the first time in weeks, I slept. The rumble beneath my house no longer felt like an invasion. It felt like opportunity, like the slow, steady countdown to Brenda's downfall. When morning came, I ironed my shirt and drove to City Hall. The sun was bright, the sky clear. Outside the Transit Authority building, reporters clustered like crows, shouting questions I didn't answer. Inside, Director Mallister shook my hand, a tall man with silver hair and kind eyes that didn't quite hide his frustration. Mr. Carter, he said, gesturing for me to sit. Quite a situation you've uncovered. He listened as I laid out the entire story, the vibrations, the scan, the tunnel, the forged signatures, the harassment. When I finished, he leaned back, steepling his fingers. What you've uncovered is troubling, he said finally. The Transit Authority has been planning this route for years. Land acquisition costs made it impossible until someone started quietly building exactly what we needed. Eleanor Brenda Calder offered to sell it to you, didn't she? He nodded grimly. 6 months ago. But she never had the rights she claimed. We turned her down because the asking price was ridiculous. Now it seems you're the rightful owner of the key segment. My heart raced. So what are you suggesting? Mallister slid a slip of paper across the desk. The city is prepared to make you an offer for full ownership and transit rights to the tunnel segment under your property. I glanced down. $8.7 million. This connects our north and south lines, Mallister explained. A critical link we've been trying to secure for years. I tried to keep my voice steady. And Brenda? His expression darkened. We'll be conducting a full investigation into how this project proceeded without proper oversight. There will be consequences. As I left the building contract in hand, my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Emergency HOA meeting called for tonight. Brenda looked scared. For the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled. I couldn't wait to attend. When I walked into the Ironwheel Ridge Community Hall that night, I could feel the electricity in the air, not the kind that comes from excitement, but the kind before a lightning strike. Every seat was filled and every whisper carried my name. Carter. Tunnel. Millions. The words buzzed like hornets. Brenda was already at the podium, perfectly composed, her red blazer gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. She smiled at the crowd, but her eyes darted from side to side. She was losing control of the narrative, and she knew it. "Good evening, neighbors," she began in that familiar honeyed tone that had fooled everyone for years. "There have been misunderstandings about our community's transit project. I want to assure you all that this is being handled appropriately. Unfortunately, one homeowner has chosen to exploit a situation for personal profit." A few murmurs rippled through the room. I didn't move, didn't blink. "Let her talk," Brenda continued. "Mr. Carter here has demanded millions from the HOA, threatening to block our access to community infrastructure unless he's paid off. I don't need to tell you what that means: higher dues, halted construction, a damaged reputation for all of Ironwheel Ridge." She turned toward me with that smug little smirk. "Would you care to comment, Mr. Carter?" I rose slowly, the sound of my chair scraping against the tiles slicing through the silence. "Sure," I said. "I'd love to comment. Let's start with this." I reached into my folder and pulled out a crisp, embossed document. The city seal shimmered under the light. "Earlier today, the Fairview Transit Authority officially recognized me as the legal owner of the tunnel segment under my property. They've also agreed to purchase full transit rights for $8.7 million. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, a few curses. Brenda's face turned the color of chalk. "And just so we're clear," I added, "the city has also opened a criminal investigation into how this project was funded and built without permits. So if you're wondering where your HOA dues went, I'd start by asking your president." "Lies," Brenda snapped. "Baseless lies." "Then you won't mind if I show everyone this." I held up a printed spreadsheet, financial records pulled from the county's public registry. 3 contracts funneled through Calder Infrastructure Partners, your brother-in-law's company. $500,000 for soil stabilization, another $200,000 for noise abatement. That's over $700,000 of HOA money missing. A voice in the crowd shouted. "You said those funds went to road repairs." Brenda slammed her gavel, her voice cracking. "This is misinformation. Mr. Carter is manipulating documents." I smiled. "Actually, these came from your own financial filings." At that, Nora Pike, her loyal treasurer, shifted uneasily beside her. "Brenda," she whispered into the mic, forgetting to cover it, "maybe we should—" "Quiet," Brenda hissed. But the room had already heard. Mrs. Dwyer, the sharp-tongued retiree from across the street, stood up. "You lied to us, Brenda. You took our money." The tension snapped. Voices rose, people shouting over each other. Some defended Brenda out of fear, others demanded her resignation. I just stood there watching the chaos unfold like a courtroom drama I didn't have to script. Finally, Brenda banged the gavel so hard it cracked. "This meeting is adjourned," she shouted, grabbing her papers and storming out through the side door. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. The damage was done. The next morning, as I sipped coffee on the porch, a black sedan pulled into my driveway. The driver's door opened and out stepped Brenda herself, her red blazer gone, replaced by a gray trench coat. Her hair was a mess. For once, she looked human. "We need to talk," she said quietly. I crossed my arms. "Funny. You weren't interested in talking when you were forging signatures." She flinched. "The city knows everything." Her mouth opened, then closed. Finally, she said, "I can make this go away. $6 million cash. Today, you sign over the tunnel rights, withdraw your claims, and walk away." I almost laughed. "You're offering me $6 million when the city's paying 8.7. Her composure slipped. "You don't understand. The city will drag this out. Eminent domain hearings, months of bureaucracy. You'll end up with less after taxes and legal fees." "Maybe," I said, leaning forward. "But they'll also expose how you built public infrastructure with private money, how you diverted HOA funds, how you forged documents. So tell me, Brenda, how much is your freedom worth?" Her face went white. She turned to leave, but I stopped her. "One more thing. The city knows about the off-the-books companies, and they've requested all HOA correspondence for the past 2 years. You should probably start packing." She didn't answer, just walked back to her car, movement stiff, mechanical. As she drove away, I noticed her hands trembling on the wheel. At 9:00 sharp, I met with Director Mallister again to finalize the agreement. The conference room was lined with polished wood and legal folders stacked like towers. Marlon sat beside me, calm, and collected, the kind of man who knew when the storm had already passed. Mallister slid the papers across the table. "Here's the official purchase contract. $8.7 million for ownership and transit rights to the tunnel segment under your property." Additionally, the city will compensate you $1.3 million for damages and legal expenses. I skimmed the documents clean, airtight, beautiful. I signed. Mallister extended his hand. Mr. Carter, on behalf of the city of Fairview, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll be working closely with state prosecutors to ensure accountability. As I shook his hand, Marlon grinned. I believe the term is justice served underground. We left City Hall to a cluster of reporters waiting outside. Microphones and cameras flashed as someone shouted, "Mr. Carter, is it true the HOA president is under investigation?" I smiled for the first time in weeks. "You'll have to ask her," I said. "She's the one who dug the hole." That evening, Ironwill Ridge was buzzing again, this time with breaking news. Local networks ran headlines like "Illegal HOA Tunnel Scandal, Exposed and Homeowner Sells Secret Subway for $10 Million." The footage showed Brenda leaving the courthouse, face hidden behind sunglasses, surrounded by reporters. Nora trailed behind her, crying. When I got home, a group of neighbors stood outside my gate. For a moment I braced for confrontation, but then Mrs. Dwyer spoke. "We owe you an apology, Miles. We didn't believe you." Another neighbor nodded. "We thought you were just being difficult. Turns out you were protecting us." I smiled faintly. "Let's just say I was protecting my property, and you all came with it." That night I walked out onto my deck, the air thick with the hum of crickets. Far below, through the faint vibration in the ground, I could feel my tunnel alive again. But this time it wasn't a secret weapon. It was part of something bigger, something legitimate. For the first time since the chaos began, Ironwill Ridge was quiet. And when the soft rumble of distant construction drifted through the earth, it didn't feel like trespass anymore. It felt like victory. Because somewhere beneath my feet, a city was laying down rails I now owned, rails they'd paid me for. And somewhere in a courthouse, downtown, Brenda Calder was realizing that every inch she'd built beneath me had only dug her deeper. By the following week, Ironwill Ridge didn't just buzz, it roared. The story had spread beyond Fairview. News anchors called it the suburban subway scandal, while blogs labeled it HOA Karen Digs her own prison. The HOA building, once pristine with hanging flower baskets and a shiny brass logo, now looked like a police set piece. Crime scene tape fluttered in the wind. Officers carried boxes of documents escorted by grim-faced auditors. I watched from the sidewalk, coffee in hand, as two detectives loaded a hard drive into an evidence bag. Marlon stood beside me, squinting into the sundae. "You realize," he said, "this might set a legal precedent for underground property rights." I smirked. "Good, let it." Inside, I saw Brenda, still dressed like she owned the place, black suit, pearls, eyes blazing with the same venom that used to intimidate half this neighborhood. Only now she wasn't scolding me about lawn heights. She was arguing with an investigator. The officer finally gestured toward the door, and Brenda's jaw locked tight as she stepped outside, straight into a cluster of cameras. Her voice trembled just enough to betray her. "This is all a misunderstanding," she said. "Our HOA acted in good faith. We were improving the community." "Using stolen funds," a reporter shouted. No comment. As she turned away, I caught her eye. For a split second, her facade cracked, fear, desperation, disbelief that her little kingdom had collapsed. I didn't smile. I just nodded once, like closing a case file. By noon, city prosecutors had officially charged her and Nora Pike with embezzlement, forgery, and reckless endangerment. Cliff, the so-called security director, flipped almost immediately, handed over text messages showing that Brenda had ordered him to keep Carter under pressure until he signs. The same evening, the community held an emergency town hall, this time not run by Brenda, but by a woman named Gloria Whitmore, a retired judge who'd lived in Ironwill Ridge for 30 years. Her voice carried the calm of someone used to restoring order. "Friends," she began, "we've been through a lot. What happened here wasn't just corruption, it was betrayal. The board failed you. But from tonight on, Ironwill Ridge will rebuild itself on transparency." I sat near the back, not wanting the spotlight, but then Gloria called my name. "Mr. Carter, would you like to say a few words?" Dozens of heads turned. It felt surreal, these same neighbors who once whispered that I was crazy now watching me like I was some reluctant hero. I stood slowly, clearing my throat. "I don't have much to say," I began. "Just that no one should ever be punished for asking questions. The HOA dug a tunnel under my property without permits, without notice, without care for anyone but themselves. I didn't fight them to get rich. I fought because it was wrong. And if there's one thing I hope this community learns, it's that rules don't make you right. Justice does." Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then steady. For the first time since this mess began, The sound didn't feel hostile. After the meeting, a few people approached me, Mrs. Dwyer handed me a plate of brownies, peace offering, she said. Ethan clapped me on the shoulder. Even Cliff muttered something that sounded like sorry man before retreating. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was something close. Later that night, Marlon and I sat in my backyard under the soft glow of string lights. He poured 2 glasses of bourbon. You ever think he said how all this started? Just a cup of coffee shaking on your table? Yeah, I said, taking a sip, and now the ground's steadier than ever. We both laughed. But beneath it was something heavier, a sense of closure, maybe even peace. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You think this is over. You'll regret making enemies underground. I showed it to Marlon. Fake bravado, he said. Brenda's in custody. Probably one of her supporters trying to rattle you. Maybe. I pocketed the phone anyway. But the next day, a low droning hum woke me up. It wasn't the usual 1130 rumble. It was heavier, closer. I ran outside and froze. A crane loomed over the construction site by the HOA clubhouse, its long arms swinging dangerously close to the utility poles. Workers in hard hats were shouting orders. I stormed toward the foreman. Who authorized this city contract? He said, waving a clipboard. We're sealing the lower entrance for inspection. Under whose supervision? He checked the sheet. Transit Authority. I exhaled, tension easing. So the city had already taken control. The once illegal tunnel was officially being integrated into the Fairview Metro expansion. They'd even named it the Integrity Line. A fitting title. Over the next few weeks, the transformation was surreal. The ugly excavation site turned into a proper infrastructure hub, fenced, regulated, documented. The same neighbors who'd cursed the tunnel now bragged about living near a future metro stop. The hypocrisy would have bothered me once. Now I just found it funny. The city sent crews to reinforce the section running beneath my land. They were meticulous surveyors marking boundaries, engineers discussing soil stability. One of them, a young woman named Tasha, shook my hand after the final inspection. You know, she said, if you hadn't caught this, the whole line would have failed safety clearance. You basically saved the city 2 years of legal hell. Guess I was the right kind of stubborn, I said. When she left, I stood at the edge of my property staring at the smooth patch of grass that now covered the sealed hatch. The earth felt quiet again, peaceful. For the first time in months, I couldn't feel the rumble, and I missed it a little. 2 months later, I received an invitation in the mail, Ironwill Ridge HOA Community Reformation Ceremony. Gloria had rebuilt the board from scratch. Transparency reports, open budgeting, and, ironically, an official bylaw banning any form of subterranean development without unanimous consent. At the ceremony, she gave a short speech, then gestured for me to come up. To the man who reminded us that property lines aren't just on paper, they're written in courage. People applauded, cameras flashed, someone even handed me a plaque that read, "For standing up when everyone else sat down." When the crowd dispersed, Gloria leaned over and whispered, "The city's finishing the paperwork next week. You'll get the final transfer of funds." I smiled. That'll buy a lot of peace and quiet. Or a better lawyer, she teased. Brenda and Nora's sentencing hit the local news 2 weeks later. Both took plea deals, 7 years, each restitution to the HOA, permanent bans from managing community funds. Watching Brenda's face on the screen, pale and lifeless, I almost pitied her. Almost. Because in the end, she didn't lose to me. She lost to her own arrogance. 6 months after the chaos, Ironwill Ridge had changed. The lawns were greener, the meetings civil, the bylaws rewritten with actual sanity. Even the tunnel, now branded the Integrity Line, was operational, connecting our suburb to downtown Fairview. Sometimes when the train passed beneath my property, I could feel a faint vibration underfoot, a soft reminder that every battle leaves a trace. One evening I hosted a neighborhood barbecue in my backyard, the same spot where all this began. Ethan grilled steaks, Mrs. Dwyer brought her brownies again, and Gloria raised a glass. To integrity, she said, and to neighbors who stand up for what's right. Everyone cheered. As laughter filled the air, I glanced toward the horizon where city lights flickered like distant stars. My phone buzzed another message from Marlon. Just got word. Case closed. The tunnel's fully under city jurisdiction. Your payout cleared. I smiled, pocketing the phone. Scout barked happily at the fireworks someone had set off near the lake. For once, the ground didn't shake. It hummed a deep, steady hum of something built right. I leaned back in my chair, content. Beneath me ran a tunnel worth millions. But above it, peace, laughter, redemption. Ironwill Ridge had finally stopped pretending to be perfect and started being real. It's strange how quickly a place can forget its own ghosts. 6 months after the chaos, Ironwill Ridge had scrubbed away almost every trace of the scandal. The cracked clubhouse steps were replaced with polished stone. A shiny new sign read Ironwell Ridge Community Rebuilt with Integrity. Even the air felt cleaner, like the neighborhood was trying to rewrite its past. Every morning, the low hum of the new Integrity line rolled beneath my property, a rhythmic, distant vibration that once terrified me. Now it sounded like peace. The trains passed on schedule, ferrying commuters to downtown Fairview, cutting through the same soil Brenda had stolen. Her project had survived, just not in the way she'd planned. I'd kept my house. The city's $10 million payout sat quietly in a trust account managed by Marlin's firm. I didn't touch it much. Instead, I used a portion to create something new, the Carter Foundation for Homeowner Justice. A nonprofit designed to help people fight back against abusive HOAs, to fund legal aid for the quiet homeowners who didn't have the time, money, or fury I'd once possessed. It started small. One lawyer, one volunteer, a hotline that rang once a week. Then stories began pouring in. An HOA that fined a veteran for flying the flag on his porch. Another that seized an elderly couple's home over unpaid dues they'd already paid twice. Every story sounded familiar, different names, same greed. I realized Brenda wasn't unique. She was a symptom of something bigger, a system built to protect control, not community. Sometimes I'd stand at the edge of my yard, coffee in hand, and look out over the neat lawns of Ironwell Ridge. People waved again. Kids rode bikes past my driveway unafraid. The tension that once crackled in the air was gone, replaced by something softer. But peace can be eerie when you've lived too long with chaos. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Gloria stopped by. The new HOA president moved with the calm of someone who had nothing to hide. Her gray hair caught the gold of the sunset. "Still adjusting to quiet life?" she asked, smiling as Scout nudged her for a pat. "Trying to," I said. "Sometimes I miss the noise." She laughed. "Most people don't say that after surviving an HOA war. I think I got used to fighting." Gloria grew serious. "You know, the city asked me to pass something along. They're naming the new metro station Carter Junction. Thought it'd be poetic." I blinked. "You're joking." She shook her head. "They said without your stubbornness, the entire Northern Line wouldn't exist. You turned a crime into infrastructure." For the first time in months, I was speechless. A train station. My name carved into steel and concrete. I'd fought to reclaim what was mine, and somehow it became something everyone could use. That night after she left, I walked out to the yard. The sky glowed faint orange, the air still. The earth rumbled softly beneath my feet, steady alive. Somewhere down there, the rails gleamed with life, carrying people who'd never know this place had once been a battlefield. But not every ghost had vanished. One morning, as I went through mail at the kitchen table, I found a letter with no return address. The handwriting was tight and deliberate. Miles. They say prison gives you time to think. I've thought a lot about tunnels, about how they connect places no one expects. You may have won this one, but tunnels don't end, they branch. Some of us always find another way out. B. I folded the letter carefully and set it aside. Brenda's words weren't a threat, not really. They were an echo of what she'd always been, someone who mistook control for power, and power for immortality. Marlin thought I should report it. "She's probably writing from a minimum security facility," he said. "Doesn't mean she's harmless." "She's harmless," I replied. "But she's right about one thing." "What's that tunnels branch?" That afternoon, I added a new division to the Carter Foundation, a program that educated homeowners on their legal rights before signing HOA agreements. We partnered with a few local universities. Law students volunteered their time to review contracts, expose hidden clauses, and teach people how to read what they were signing. Brenda had dug downward for greed. I decided to dig upward for change. Months passed. The Integrity Line officially opened to the public with a grand ceremony. Banners fluttered, city officials gave speeches, and the mayor cut a red ribbon stretched across the entrance to Carter Junction Station. Cameras flashed as the first train pulled in, smooth, gleaming, humming like a promise. Standing on the platform, I could see my reflection in the polished tile. For a moment, the past flickered behind it, the dirt, the cracks, the fear. Then it was gone. A reporter approached, microphone extended. "Mr. Carter, you turned a neighborhood scandal into a civic success. What does that feel like?" I thought for a second. "It feels like the ground stopped shaking." She smiled. "Do you think justice was served?" "Not just justice," I said. "Perspective. Sometimes what buries you can also lift you if you stand your ground long enough." When I got home that evening, the neighborhood threw an impromptu celebration. Kids waved little flags with Integrity Line printed across them. Ethan grilled burgers while Mrs. Dwyer's brownies disappeared faster than she could plate them. Gloria raised her glass once more, this time to the man who turned a tunnel into a legacy. For the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt rooted. Later that night, long after the laughter faded, I sat on my porch with Scout curled beside me. The cicadas buzzed their summer song, and in the distance the faint echo of a train rolled through the earth. I thought about Brenda, how greed had made her blind, about the neighbors who'd once believed her lies, about how easily people confuse order for justice. And I thought about the lesson the whole ordeal had carved into me, like words etched in concrete: you don't really own land until you're willing to defend it. Ownership isn't a deed, it's conviction. The tunnel was gone now, sealed safe and humming with the rhythm of honest work. But the fight that had started it all had tunneled somewhere deeper, into me, into this place, into everyone who watched a man stand up to something bigger and louder and say, "No, not this time." When the next train passed, the ground trembled just slightly beneath my chair. Scout's ears twitched. I smiled and whispered, "Don't worry, buddy. That's not trouble anymore. That's progress." I raised my glass to the dark horizon where the tracks disappeared underground, to the battle that almost broke me, and to the peace that came after. Because sometimes justice doesn't ride in on sirens. It comes quietly rolling beneath your feet, steady and unstoppable. And sometimes the very thing that shook your home becomes the foundation that keeps it standing. Life has a way of testing how deep your roots really go. The HOA tried to scare me, silence me, crush me under their weight, but in doing so they made me stronger. Standing up for your rights doesn't always make you popular. Sometimes it makes you the villain before you become the victor. But truth doesn't need approval. It just needs persistence. So if someone ever tries to build over your peace, whether it's your land, your dignity, or your boundaries, don't back down. Dig deeper. Stand your ground. Because the moment you stop fighting for what's yours, someone else will claim it. To everyone watching this, thank you for sticking through this story. If you've ever faced unfairness from an HOA or anyone who abused power, tell your story below. And don't forget, subscribe for more HOA drama, revenge, and justice that hits right where it hurts.